let's introduce our varsity panel then. Down at the end, we've got experimental filmmaker Craig Baldwin. His 1995 film, Sonic Outlaws, was an experimental documentary on the emerging electronic folk culture, exploring the legal, political, and artistic implications of the audio collage work of culture jamming collectives like Negative Land. And we also have Mark Hostler here from Negative Land, one of the founding members of the group. Since 1980, Negative Land has been creating records, videos, radio, and live performances using appropriated sound, image, and text. They make them say things that they never intended to. And they have twice been sued for copyright infringement, quite an honor. Probably best known for taking some outtakes of Detroit's beloved Casey Kasem and Not One of His Better Days and mixing it with some U2 songs. To my left here is Larry Jordan. Larry has been practicing law since 1977. He heads the Ann Arbor, Michigan office of the law firm of Jaffe Raitt, Hauer & Weiss. He also chairs the firm's intellectual property group. He represents a number of artists in all media, publishers, writers, inventors, musicians, researchers, and other creative people and companies. Larry is a past chair of the Arts, Communications, Entertainment, and Sports Law section of the State Bar of Michigan. That is the group that we belong in. I'm the current chair of that group. My name is Matt Bauer, and I'll be your moderator for today's panel discussion. To kick things off, how many filmmakers do we have here today? Other artists? Do we have any lawyers in the group? If you're brave enough to raise your hand, great. And of the people who have raised their hand, how many have used pre-existing works in their art? Or if you're a lawyer, have you had to, yeah, good. If you're a lawyer, have you had to advise people on using pre-existing works in their art? Okay. And did you, were you ever concerned that maybe you were violating copyright laws? Anyone? Yes. Okay. Well, we don't know if we're going to answer all your questions today, but we hope what we're going to be able to accomplish is to educate you a little bit on, or maybe too much, on what copyright law is, what the fair use doctrine is. But we're hoping to take the conversation a little bit deeper today, not just talk about the current state of the law, but what the law could be, maybe what it should be for artists. And to, do we want to go to the video first? Yeah. Sure. Before we get there, how about a little video presentation?
Everything about it is appealing, stealing everything that traffic will allow. Nowhere do you get that happy feeling when you are stealing people like show people. There's no stealing like stealing show people.
From Minneapolis named Jim Gladman, and the idea behind that was, well, the audio came from me. I was driving around in my car one day and I heard Ethel Merman on the radio singing this song, and it just dawned on me that, well, gee, it'd be easy to re-edit it so that she's singing about stealing music. That's kind of funny. What could we do with that? We made the auto track, and then after that was made, talked with Jim about it, and had this idea that why don't we take the RAAA at face value? You know, they say that that downloading music is exactly the same as stealing an object. There's no difference, right? And I think personally that's insane. But we said, let's make a film that just kind of takes that at face value and actually shows it as being shoplifting. And the other thing about this film as well that's interesting is that some of it is actual found footage. There's computer generated stuff. There's a lot of fake found footage in there too. There's a lot of stuff that looks like we found it. It's not. We actually got actors and sets and mixed it together. And so that's a kind of a fun thing to kind of combine stuff like that together. Craig does that in his work too.
There's one difference between stealing a physical album and downloading it. If you steal the physical album, it's $800 in civil fees, and if you download it, it's 5 million in damage.
That's logical.
Before we get too deep into the conversation, I thought for the benefit of those people who maybe don't know that much about copyright law or what fair use is, I would kick it over to Larry here to give us all a brief explanation.
Let me put this in perspective. If we were on a panel like this about 300 years ago, you walked in, you were artists. Of course, film was not quite as technologically sophisticated 300 years ago as it is today. You were artists and you walked into a program like this today, and you were going to hear about what is the state of the law and what do certain artists think ought to be the state of the law going forward. The discussion that we would be having is the lawyers would be saying it is not legal for an artist to own a copyright in anything that the artist ever creates. That belongs only to publishers. And the government has a lot to say about what you can do with your art too, but you as an individual artist do not have the right to ever own a copyright, and certainly you have no right to ever make a nickel or a farthing or whatever they were then, off of your copywritten creative artwork. And then you would have the forward-looking people looking into the future, and those would include people like John Locke and Tom Paine and Tom Jefferson, and they would say, we really want to see a radical change in the copyright law, because if we're going to have more freedom of expression and more dissemination of ideas in this 18th century world of ours, we have to give incentives to copyright holders, to artists, to own copyrights and be the ones who control whether their work is published, how their work is published, who can publish parts of it, etc., etc. And those more radical people, as you know, ended up writing the Constitution of this country in the late 18th century. And they institutionalized this concept that copyrights can be held by individuals, especially by artists. And Tom Paine, who I mentioned, and as you know, was very involved in writing the American Declaration of Independence, and involved in really creating the laws in the 18th century that became the foundation of our country today. Tom Paine was a writer who felt strongly about two things, interestingly, relative to copyright. Number one, he felt strongly that artists and writers should have the right to control their own work. And number two, he said he personally made the choice that he was never going to make money off of his copywritten works. He would rather literally starve, and he came close to it a few times, than prevent free copies of his, in his case, pamphlets, being distributed all over the United States and England. So the point is, he said the artist has the control, but it's the artist's choice whether to give it away or not give it away. That was institutionalized in our Constitution, and the whole discussion we're going to have about copyright, I think, has to be framed by that knowledge that it is a core value of our government and our polity, that people who create things start off with the presumption that they are the ones who have the right to control how those works are disseminated.
Can I ask you a question, though, about that? How much do you think I mean, my take on the way the copyright is written in the Constitution is that as I mentioned, when we spoke earlier before everyone came in, it says it's for progress of the science and useful arts. It's the first thing it says. It doesn't say it's to make you money. It does say that it then allows you these limited ways, it allows you to control your work for a limited time, and by the way, it was only 14 years, which is, no one can even believe that now. You look at what we have now, what is it, the lifetime of the creator, 75 years? 70 years was the lifetime of the creator, meaning nothing made in your lifetime will come to the public domain, nothing. So it's an incredible step from 14 years was what the best minds at that time thought made sense. These were, but my take on it is that it's been inverted by kind of all these different corporate pressures and thinking that the intent was to help create and foster creativity, ideas, science, technology, and ideas, new ideas. And then we give you this kind of control. And then now copyright is mostly being framed as, well, it's all about being able to make money.